Basically, genetic information from the lost twin came with the one that survived. This exact same scenario accounted for over 70% of my cases. The body understands how to fight things that are foreign. That the Nephilim had was like 6 fingers and toes, and a lot of times they had 2 rows of teeth too, so they could do things a lot faster. Advanced angelic beings, that vibration was high enough that they started becoming a little bit more present. There's 3 things that won't hide forever. One's the sun, one's the moon, and the other one's the truth.
This is the age of the multidimensional self.
Hello and welcome back to Divine Alchemy Healing. I'm Frog, standing in for Kelly today. Again, this is my second interview. Maybe getting over the nerves a little bit of doing interviews. Do send your best wishes out to her for a speedy recovery from the bug that she's been suffering with. Today, we have a very special guest who we've talked to before. Very interesting man with plenty of riz and aura, as the young people say. And yeah, he's a man who has 15 years of experience with pendulums and healing. He's the mind behind Pendulum Apometrix, but not just that, you know, he is a medium, a healer, and amongst other things, even a tattoo artist, and a very good one at that. So check out his work on Medium Nick, is it?
Tattoo Medium.
Tattoo Medium on TikTok and Pendulum Apometrix on Facebook. He did a recent talk actually at the Flagstaff Dowsing conference on a very interesting topic, which we'll hopefully be diving into later on, called the Phantom Twin, which is really exciting. But yeah, he's a man who has many talents and plenty to share, and I'm really looking forward to getting into it today, so stick around and I'm sure you'll be entertained. Hello, Nick, and how are you?
Hey, Frog, thanks for the introduction. That was awesome. I'm doing pretty good, man. Thanks for having me back. But looking forward to connecting with you guys again. And sorry that Kelly's not feeling good, but sending out my good vibes and good prayers her way. Hopefully she'll recover quickly.
Thank you, Nick. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, you know, she's improving, but it's also, I suppose, it's pushed me to get into chatting to our guests, and people can get to know me a little bit better other than from just my artwork. So yeah, I mean, well, as well as a tattoo artist, you're also a fantastic body popper, which is that the term for it?
Oh, you talking about the dancing?
The dancing, yeah.
So yeah, that was something I was doing before I did really anything else. I started doing that stuff in middle school and really enjoyed it. And even when I got out of high school, you know, I tattooed now, but when I got out of high school, I had this like vision that I was, you know, going to be like this backup dancer and go around with like concerts and like do shows and stuff. And like, that's kind of like where my mind was at with stuff back then. So dancing was always a big part of my life. And so sometimes, you know, some of that stagnation hits you in life or you feel stagnant. It was always a way for me to kind of like get things moving and to get things feeling well. And just lately I've been pulling it back out only when I feel the inspiration. I don't sit there and practice too much. All of a sudden I'll hear a song and I'll just kind of feel it and I'll press record and just kind of go at it. And so, you know, with everything going on in the world, I know people being on social media, we see the stuff on our feeds, people arguing, people fighting, you know, a lot of that stuff. Just a little bit of 15 seconds, 30 seconds of dancing or something like that, you know, putting that vibe out there. I just feel that it's kind of something maybe the world could use right now. And man, I wish I had this when I was younger, though. Just the ability to just have a phone that I could press record and pick whatever song I want and just do a dance clip. Like,
yeah, no, I love it.
We didn't have all that.
Yeah, I you know, it always brings. That's the thing. Whenever I watch you dance, it always brings a smile to my face. So, at some point in the intro here, I can even put a bit of your dancing just to just to keep people entertained. Right. So, what are we going to do today? We're going to talk about. Well, we're going to start talking about just to get people familiar with you, your work, your tools, and your philosophy. So, you know, how do you integrate 15 years of dowsing experience into your current work with Pendulum Apometrix? And what is Apometrix?
So Pendulum Apometrix, when I first started getting into this stuff, trying to put a word on it, I came across a book called Spirit and Matter by a fellow named Dr. Lacerda. And what Apometrix is, it comes from a study called Apometry. And Apometry is basically a combination of like spiritualist stuff combined with like Brazilian native ritual stuff as well that deals with spirit. So it's kind of like a Brazilian native and also kind of like a little bit of like Western understanding and stuff kind of combined together. And it's basically what I really find interesting about it is they use people as mediums. So you have one person that's basically doing like the healing or the counseling or whatever you want to do for the spirits, right? But then you have a handful of mediums that embody the spirits, and they would use communication that way. So some of the laws that they have is how they can affect spirit or how spirit can be affected. I really took a lot of that understanding with me, except I'm a little bit different. I don't use mediums. I do the communication myself. And so I kind of get a chance to be that medium as well as do the work. But that got me moving in a direction. And after I started seeing some success in certain areas and certain areas I wasn't getting success, I started realizing that a lot of this success was aligned on practices that were based out of love. Anything that was like forceful or anything that was like dominating, or which some of this stuff really was, you wouldn't get all the success that you'd want, especially when you started encountering things that were a lot smarter and a lot older. And so that's where Apometry comes from. So for me, getting into the pendulum, the very first book I ever read on the pendulum was actually it was a book called People That Don't Know They're Dead by Gary Leon Hill.
Right.
And this book gave me the introduction on how to pick up and identify spiritual presences around me with the pendulum. So from what I understand, this is usually what people, after they've been dowsing for a little bit, get into. Mm-hmm. This was my very first introduction. And so for me, it was very much divine, just because being around the paranormal was always a part of my life, And so dowsing, being able to pick up on the unseen and be able to get some sort of a tangible response or feedback to something that is unseen, right? Getting into what we're going to talk about today, I think a lot of people would know that I help people with hauntings, and I talk a lot about the different ways that we can do our healing techniques to help clear buildings and deal with the different kinds of stuff that's out there. When you're dealing with the unseen, it correlates so much to dealing with people. So when I first started getting into using the pendulum, and this is when I started reading some like Eric Hunter's work and just started understanding a little bit more about pendulum healing and that kind of stuff. When I started doing that for people, I started noticing people having attachments, or the house would have something in it that was affecting the person's health, right? And so learning to work on healing people, I learned how to work with spirits. And learning how to connect and work with spirits, I learned how to help heal people. And so to me, they were very one and the same. And so the topic that I'm going to choose to talk a little bit about today, the vanishing twin, is something that I find really, really interesting. I've been doing some kind of like a healing work for probably about the past like 7, maybe 8 years of this. And I never really put down information on how or why this stuff works. And frankly, I didn't really understand all that much, but I just knew that if I did this, I was going to generate a response. And so it wasn't until about a year and a half, 2 years ago, in my neighborhood, there was a young boy that he was fighting leukemia, and he was actively going through chemo. And, he hadn't really been to school, and sweet kid, nice kid, super playful when he had energy. And I talked with his mom. I ended up running into him at a different park one day. And we started talking about some spiritual things, and I could tell that she was probably a little open. So I said, hey, I got kind of a different angle. I'd be willing to discuss it with you if you're open to it. And so she said, sure. And so at this time, I already knew that there was some kind of like cancers that were linked to some sort of a presence of an absorbed or lost twin in the family lineage. I already had this down. I knew this already.
Okay.
And so as I'm looking at her, I get this vision. This is where the whole mediumship comes in. I get this vision of this woman wearing white. She's got like a little basket in her hand. She's standing outside next to a house that you could tell is made, had like outside porches, like logs and stuff. Anyways, yada, yada, yada. I said, I think this is like your grandma or his great grandma or your great grandma. Is someone where within that line of lineage, right? And sometimes when you're dealing with someone that has more than one generation, sometimes grandma and great grandma can get like a little muffled, just because they could be both, right? So anyways, she ends up messaging me later, like a couple days later, and says, hey, do you recognize anybody? She shows me this giant like wall of like family photos, right? This huge collage. And I said, her right there. I said, the one with the white. And so this was her grandmother.
Wow.
So her grandmother, so here's where the dowsing part comes in.
Okay.
I have my little special chart and my angle, and I start asking questions. And I was able to locate and find that grandma was a twin. She actually had a male twin in the womb with her, and the twin had passed away. There was a trace amount, and this is where at first I would think it was like cells and this and that. What it actually is would be called a neurocrest cell. Basically, genetic information from a lost twin came with the one that survived. The one that survived had a child, and the child was just fine. And then that child had another child, and it came out with cancer. And so what I was able to find that these neurocrest cells that can be passed through these different kinds of pregnancies can also be taken on by the mother. But a neurocrest cell is basically a cell that has the potential to turn into any of the systems of the body, like the skeletal system, respiratory system, circulatory system, your eyes, your heart, your stomach, your reproductive system, everything. These cells can turn into any one of these things. So if you get a cell from a different body, or even a cell from your own body that lands in a different location than it should, it's going to cause a lot of problems. And so what I was able to find was this neurocrest cell was linked to the skeletal system. And this is where this leukemia comes from. And so this case study that I did, I actually documented over 100 different families. And this is people from all over the world, men, women, children. There was a handful of even transgender people that I had in this study. I just really wanted to try and make it very diverse, right? And just completely random. The only thing they all had in common, they had some sort of unknown disease that the doctors couldn't work with, autoimmune issues, cancers, severe rashes or allergies, or just some of that stuff. I was interested in all of that, right? And so what it did was send me down a rabbit hole that every time I thought I got deeper, it got even more deep, and it kept getting more and more connections. And so I eventually had to stop, because I had to present this in a certain way, right, without getting super far into it. But what I'm trying to say is that very first scenario of there being some sort of a neurocrest cell linked to the skeletal system that was inherited by the grandson, right, or the great grandson. This exact same scenario accounted for over 70% of my cases.
Wow. Wow. And so, forgive me, neurocrest cell, did you say?
Correct.
What is a neurocrest cell? Pardon my ignorance.
Well, basically, they start off in the formation of the spine, and then from the spine, they branch out to the rest of the parts of the body. And so a neurocrest cell is basically a cell that can turn into anything in the body.
Wow.
So it can make the brain, it can make the bones, it can make the pancreas, it can make your nervous system, it can make your blood vessels, it can do all of that stuff. And so, if this is kind of something that is new, I would highly suggest that you look up what's also called a teratoma. Teratomas are these cysts and tumors that are sometimes removed from people, especially around a woman's reproductive area in the lower stomach, or even up on the head. A teratoma usually has hair or teeth or even eyeball in it and stuff. And
right, yeah.
Or a dermoid cyst, I think is what they're also called, dermoid cyst.
Yep.
And so this is another presence of that, right? And some of them can be cancerous and some of them can be harmless. You know what I mean? And so what I found, though, through the study, there's either two ways that it could be cancerous. One is usually right away, or significantly long later, where all of a sudden it does become that way. I mean, especially if emotionally we're carrying imbalance with us through our life and we sustain a lot of trauma. I mean, we already know the impact of sadness and depression and negativity and just blunt force trauma has on our cellular memory. And so, like I said, this really opens up another can of worms, and I had to just kind of focus on the actual meat and potatoes of it, but because this totally spins out into a spiritual thing too that we'll hopefully get enough time to talk about.
Yeah, that's amazing. It makes me think, and I don't know if you and I have touched on this before, of the scientific studies. I don't know how true it is, how validated it is. There was some study that was done that was based on an idea called microchimerism. Are you familiar with that term?
No, but I am familiar with chimerism. Yes.
Yeah.
Chimerism.
So basically, what they found was that there were a number of women in this study that they were running tests on that had DNA inside of them that didn't belong to them, and crucially, didn't actually belong to one of their children or the father of their children.
Right.
So what it began to point to was that even like previous lovers that they might have had, their body was storing DNA for years, potentially afterwards. Sometimes it was, bizarrely, it was sort of in the back of the brain or something. I need to go back to read the study again, but it really opened my eyes to the idea that there was a sort of a longevity in terms of, genetic information that could be passed between people. And it makes sense that it would be, I think, what you were describing, it would come down a matrilineal line. And yeah, your story there about this thing being passed down kind of just really brought up that idea of microchimerism for me.
Yeah, I mean, and you're not wrong, because right, and here's another rabbit hole, right? Chimerism and stuff. And sometimes people are like alopecia, where you see someone that like maybe has like a melanated skin pigment, all of a sudden they have like white or lighter blotches on their skin and stuff, right? Or sometimes, lighter skin people like us, they get like the big pink blotches and stuff too. But exact same thing. People that are born with more than one color eye, it's the exact same thing. And it has some presence to do with there being two different sets of DNA. And here's something I want you to think about. So when we hear about these autoimmune issues, right, and people say, I don't know what's going on, my body is attacking my thyroid, or my body is attacking itself, or, you hear this story in Western medicine, that's about the best explanation that we can get, because we're seeing what's happening. But what if the body was attacking something foreign to it? Because what's there is foreign to the body, and the body understands how to fight things that are foreign, right? And so when I first started getting into this stuff, it came out as something that I would see in this upper area, what we would call the thymus or the upper heart chakra. But then I also started noticing it on the spine too, a lot, or sometimes in the lower abdomen. And to me, in my mind, it would look kind of mucky. And on my chart, this, I got this chart off of like Google or something. It was swung to negative earth energy. And I'm like, I don't even know what negative earth energy is, but I started noticing it in these different people, especially in kids in certain situations that couldn't have experienced like sexual trauma or something like that, at such a young age. And just, I was running into a lot of roadblocks here.
Sure.
And so as I kept looking at it, I think I found a way that we can actually manipulate this stuff. But I also have a little bit of information I can throw your way as far as some of the findings that I found with this stuff. Like, for instance, when people have like IBS or have Crohn's disease or have any type of like bone marrow or blood cancer, this is usually related to the presence of these neurocrest cells that were forming the skeletal system. You ever heard of someone born with a tail?
Yes.
This is the same thing.
Right.
This same thing, because I think you'll find in that tail is like a teratoma, and you'll find skeletal bits and stuff that are in there.
Okay.
People that have autoimmune issues, like we were just talking about, I found like with lupus, the one that sometimes they get the butterfly rash on their face, and they're really sore joints, and can be like feverish and just like really like tired and lethargic and all this and that. Same thing with like Hashimoto's, and enlarged basically you see like get a little bit enlarged, and it can create a goiter and all these different kinds of things. Or even fibromyalgia is also linked to this stuff. But when somebody absorbs a neurocrest cell that's linked to the respiratory system, most of the time turns into lupus. If they absorb something from the circulatory system or the nervous system into that thymus area, this is what creates a lot of different unexplainable autoimmune diseases where the body's attacking itself. And along this line, right, if we're holding on to genetic information from other stuff, then we can even look at like Down syndrome, right? People with Down syndrome are known to have more chromosomes than the rest of us, right? Well, I wonder where those came from.
Right.
And then even I see this stuff with autism. There's a big part of it that's also linked with autism, right? And people can be on one side of the fence or the other. But one thing that we know over here is that a lot of times these aborted fetuses through these women's health organizations, those cells are also used in the study of vaccinations. So now we're taking the idea of taking like, fetus cells of a female, putting them into a male, and male cells and putting them into female. Now all of a sudden, some of this other stuff starting to come to be.
Right. Is Down syndrome missing a chromosome, or has it got one extra one? Forgive me.
It's got one extra one.
Okay, right. I see. Well,
even cerebral palsy and spinal bifida, it's all connected to this stuff. And so some people would say, well, this is God's plan. This is, you don't want to mess with that. And so for me, if there's ever been one thing that's drove me more than anything, and that is when someone tells me I can't do something, or that it's impossible, or that we should just let it be, when I'm like, for some reason, like I would wake up in the middle of the night and I think about this stuff, and I would just go down my own tangent of just trying to swallow as much information as I can. You know what I mean? And so the good news is, being the dowser, being able to find these different angles of which ones were doing which, and how this all kind of came to be. It could be handed down, from the twin that you actually absorbed, or something that was actually handed down from the family lineage. And we can positively affect these neurocrest cells and clear them from the body to help enhance health and balance in people once again.
Okay. Right. And so you're using a pendulum to identify that entity, or that sort of influence?
Yes.
And
so I have here, let me see if I can pull it up real quick. I have like a little chart that I made that, we can always talk about how to navigate the chart. But like with most pendulum users, we'll have a chart of certain different things and we ask questions. But like with my chart, I kind of made this on my own. You can see like down here towards the bottom of it, this basically gives you a list of different kinds of absorbed twins. Now, for me, I made this chart before I really understood what I was dealing with was neurocrest cells. And so I just presence of an absorbed twin, right? So you find the different types that are there. Then you see within, this is how many weeks it was absorbed. And most of the time, these cases, like this stuff, it gets absorbed like before like 8 weeks of pregnancy. And so it's like super difficult to like even know that there was even a second child that was in there. Most of the time it comes off as like slight cramping, or like a woman having a little bit of blood during that first part of pregnancy. Right. And like it is being like, perfectly fine, especially when they give birth to a perfectly healthy kid. Right.
Yep.
So from there, basically I'm able to say what systems were absorbed. And here's all like what you would say the systems of the neurocrest cells. And then the very last one, this very outer ring right here, this basically can help you understand where in the family lineage did this originate from. And sometimes this stuff is like handed down, and this is really connected to like hereditary family illnesses that I think one after another generation kind of experiences. And so that's the factual part of being able to like use dowsing to be able to kind of like track this stuff down, right? But the fun part is what we get to do with the information after we got it.
Yeah, right. I mean, because I knew there's something in this that you're a specialized tool you're using called a luminary pendulum or something, isn't it?
Sure, I'll pull one out. So I always try and outdo myself all the time. So what I came up with was a pendulum that's called a luminary. So these are the three main areas of pendulum work I would say I probably do the most, is like healing and clearing of like earthbound human spirits, dealing with the darker stuff, non-human spirits, healing and clearing that stuff, and then also balancing the digestive and reproductive systems. These are probably like the three main areas that like I help people with the most. And so I came up with a pendulum. Before I pretty much would have to use a different pendulum for each one of those. So this time I came up with something that actually works for all three. And so it's really outperforms the rest of them. But this is my luminary pendulum right here. The ones I sell are with gold. I got the only one with silver at the moment. So basically the reason why I came up with this is because I started working a lot with the sphere and with the pyramid. And I noticed that the energy is coming from both of them. They kind of complemented each other. Like it'd be like, making a cake, but you also have this bowl of frosting, right? Like, but it has to be separate, but together they're good, right?
Yeah.
So same kind of thing. They complemented each other. And so I started figuring out how to basically harmonize and enhance both of them by sticking these 7 rings. I have 6 in between the 2, and then the one up here at the top is the 7th one.
Okay.
7's always been a real sacred number for me. There's a lot of balance to it. People correlate it a lot with like the major chakras. I was born on the 7th at like 10:07. Last name has 7 numbers in it, or letters in it, excuse me.
7 notes.
So 7's always been
7 notes.
7's always been a big number for me.
Yeah, 7 colors of the rainbow, 7 wonders of the world. I mean, 7 days a week, they go on, don't they? 7. Yeah.
They do. So the cool thing about this is with this pendulum, you can do all the spiritual work that you might have heard me talk about, and you can do this work. You can do this work we're about to do. So the way that, you know, now that we've talked a little bit about it, I know there's people that are out there like, okay, how do you actually do this stuff, right? So after, you know, you're able to just kind of look and see what it is, and you don't really have to know exactly what neurocrest cell. And for me, that was just me kind of cracking out and getting that information because I wanted knowledge behind these beliefs. So basically what you could term it as is astral fragments, absorbed twins, neurocrest cells, whatever you want to call them, right? And so what we do is we use the pendulum to be able to hold it over the photo of the person, right? This would be something that like I wouldn't work on a person like in front of me. Typically with this work, I would like to do this work distance just because I feel like I can connect with them a lot better, especially like when they're sleeping or something. And so doing this work, what I would do is I would just basically hold it over, and I have a set of protocols that go with it. Basically what you do is you take away the pain, you take a big breath, and being able to use this breath, this is a huge part of this because a lot of people don't understand the breath is really life force. And if you have the will from your heart center, or what people would say your electromagnetic field, if you have the will to want to connect, and then the knowledge and understanding of how to connect, and then you use your words in a divine way to say, this is what I want to do, then you take that breath and you seal the deal, and you really put a lot of mass behind what you're actually doing. And so on an energetic level, we can really affect cells and the way the body responds big time to it. So what you do is you basically would hold it over, right? Ask to remove all pain, take all the pain away, ask to remove any memories of pain, which is usually like emotional energy. Do that. And then from there, I would send a breath of life force to help nourish and bring everything back to balance. From there, it gets a little bit more complicated because it's going to have to open up your perspective. Some people out there don't believe in angels. Some people don't believe in spiritual helpers or spiritual guides. I had no idea about the one that showed up for me, but have you ever heard of Master Hilarion? Or Hilarion the Healer?
Yes, I have. And I don't know whether it was from our contact with you originally or somewhere else, but go on, please.
Okay. Sure.
Yeah.
So he's also known as Paul the Apostle, reborn. And so for whatever reason, when I started getting into this work, this is who showed up. And so I trusted the process that you're going to have to call upon someone divine to help remove this. So basically, after we've taken away the pain, the memories of pain, and nourished it, what we do then is I place a bubble of light around it. I just visualize a bubble of light, and then I invert the polarity of the electrons that are associated with all cellular memory of the absorbed twin, astral fragments, neurocrest cell, whatever you want to call it. And so from there, what that does is it unsticks it from the energy field, it unsticks it from the physical body, and it makes it a little bit easier to move on. And then from there, you just call upon the assistance of whoever is going to be your spiritual helper to help take it and merge it back with your higher self or core soul. And so after we're done with all that, we balance the body. So my effectiveness in being able to help people with this first part and this first part alone, you usually get some sort of reaction. You get some sort of response, right? But it's still incomplete at this moment. Right now, I've affected health of the body by the outside in, working on the energy and working to the inside to remove this stuff, right? The second part is the most important part, and that's the water imprinting. And so what I would do is I would have somebody send me a picture of a glass of water. And then I would say, okay, let me see this water. All right. And I would literally just hold it over my phone, right? Hold it over my phone and do the same thing. Okay, I asked to, increase this water's ability to receive healing energy. Hit a breath, put it in there. I asked to neutralize anything that doesn't serve the body's highest good health and well-being, neutralize that. And then I would change it to the color of blue, green to optimize peace, balance, and well-being. And then from here, I would ask this water that upon drinking this water, that it revitalized all the cellular tissue in the physical body, all the cellular tissue associated with all of the circulatory system, nervous system, digestive system, the major organs, the brain, like whatever, right? It all kind of comes down to how well you do it. And then from there, ask that it help flush the system completely in a natural way that is easy for the person to go through.
Right.
And so most of the time, people would have to use the restroom. Would be a really common way that this would go. But sometimes when it was stuff up in like the upper regions of the body, like tumors and stuff, usually there's like a little bit of heat, sometimes muscle spasms, a little bit of pressure. But what I found is this water over the next 48 hours really recalibrates their system. Now all of a sudden they might sleep for like a day or two, and then all of a sudden have a ton of energy or feel good, or their appetite comes back. And what I found is when people allowed me to do the energy work and then allowed me to do the water technique,
yes,
I would do the water technique of follow-up like probably like 2 or 3 more times over the span of like the next like 2 months.
Right.
And I found a huge response. That little boy that I helped in my neighborhood, I did 3 water techniques on him in about a month and a half after doing the energy work. And that boy's cancer-free and going to school this year.
Wow. Wow. Are you saying that, so once you've done the water thing with the pendulum, which is over a photograph of the water on your phone, which they've sent, that they drink the water after you've done it? Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. I don't think I said that. Yes. Drink the water.
Yeah.
And so I always tell people, if you're going to do this, like, don't plan on having a busy day. Like, do it at like the end of the day when you're going to sleep, or when you have a weekend that you just get to kind of chill.
Yeah.
Because, if you got to use that bathroom a lot, you don't want to being caught doing anything important. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Gosh. Okay. That's fascinating. That's fascinating. And so this is nobody's talking about this as far as I know, and I've not heard anything like this from anybody else, or not that I'm very well read on pendulum healing and all the different rivulets that tributaries of interest, but this seems like quite a novel approach. Is that right?
Yeah. It's something that I think to the core of it's just meant to help people. And I really didn't want to talk a ton about this stuff before I presented it, because I was still, here's the thing, you put it out there, right? You put it out there as free information and say, hey, here's what I found. Don't listen to a word I said. Find out for yourself, but here's what I found. You know what I mean? You'll also get other people out there that will take this information and then try and make it into some sort of a monetary compensation, where they'll be able to do this for money, or teach you how to do this for money, or just, you know what I mean? And so for me, I wanted to deliver it pure. And if people end up doing that, then people are going to end up doing that. But me, I wanted to just kind of deliver it pure and just be like, look, we're here. But, I'm going to grab this. I'm going to walk in the kitchen. I'm going to get a little bit more coffee, because I really would like to get into this whole spiritual component of why we're actually here.
Oh, that sounds yeah, absolutely like a great idea. How was the reception to at the speech that you did at the Flagstaff Dowsers conference?
Man, it was beautiful. I love being down there. If you've ever heard of Flagstaff, it actually kind of looks a little bit like part of the state where I'm from. But, it is kind of high desert. So you get the cactus, you get the red dirt, so you get all that kind of stuff there. But it's a beautiful location. The people are really lovely up there. They're super nice. And
good.
Basically, I'm around a bunch of dowsers that I think have been doing that stuff longer than I've been alive, man.
Yeah, sure.
So I'm always delivering new information, and a lot of times unpopular information. But they always give me an opportunity to present, so I love them, and they're
good.
Great.
That's good. Yeah, I mean, because this sort of thing, I think for characters like Kelly and myself, and I'm sure a lot of our viewers, that we can kind of run with it as you're explaining. But I'm sure for a lot of people, it's very challenging stuff as well, to even just entertain for a moment. So yeah. I totally appreciate it. It's very brave, actually, that you're kind of exercising yourself into finding ways of telling of getting the information out.
Yeah. And, and something I didn't talk about, and I won't get into very deep about it, but I will touch on it. When I talked about transgenderism, one of the things that I found with this too is finding the cells that are associated with the reproductive system of another sex within the same person. And so when I tell people that, all the people that were in my case study that were transgender all had this presence of this neurocrest cell that was all there. And so not to say that something's wrong with them or that they need to be healed or this and that, but more so to kind of be like, look, you feel this way. Here's some evidence that says why you would probably feel this way, because you absolutely have that within you. You know what I mean? You have something within you that is generating that feeling of being what we would consider the opposite sex. So you're not exactly crazy, and there is something there going on that I just don't think people are really understanding yet.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you and I have got to be carrying around cells from our mother,
Sure.
in the womb. So we're all potentially carrying around cells from the opposite sex all the time, aren't we? All of
right. So hopefully it paints a little bit more of a picture than it just being labeled like a mental illness or something, right? So I mean, just like, okay, yeah, you feel this way. I understand why you feel this way based on what I see. So hopefully that allows us to maybe be a little bit more compassionate and understanding on how what's actually there and what do we really know.
Yeah, right. Okay. So it's a way of unraveling it a little bit, isn't it? Because there's a lot of tension around that subject, isn't there? So yeah.
So one of the things that I found too, which is going to lead us into our next part of this about the spiritual component, is when I found people that had the presence of these neurocrest cells or absorbed twins or whatever it is that's coming down through the family lineage, I found the majority, if not all of these people, were extremely sensitive to spirit. They were the people that were dealing with wild dreams. They were the people that were dealing with spiritual contact at a young age. They were extremely empathic, just had that ability to know without knowing why they know. And just, a lot of times they get put in these families where they're not that way at all. And they're kind of on a lily pad by themselves, so to speak. And so when you have these families of trauma, right? You have these families of trauma, let's say the parents argue a lot, or maybe they're alcoholics or just whatever the case is, right? You have emotionally unstable adults. And you have a child that grows up in the situation. Even if you don't believe in spiritual stuff or have any kind of comprehension of it, you fight in a room, that child is going to be one of those that's going to learn how to read a room really quick and whether or not they should even say anything if they're going to judge them. If these adults are upset, they're going to read the room and decide for themselves whether they're going to stay or go to their room or go somewhere else out and do something, right? And so what this is, trauma in the family lineage creates the empath. The empath is the one that notices the imbalances and notices where there's friction or just when there's unhealthy things that need to be changed, right? So we can be that person this time that can help bring balance to our family lineage by breaking the cycle, right? We could say this part, right? No problem. Sure, it's a lot of work, especially when you come from a family that usually needs a lot of help. You know what I mean? And so there's this ability to be born into this life that can allow us to bring balance to our family lineage by being the one that takes on the trauma and then breaks it and then changes it, right? And I think there's a reason why a lot of us here are for that reason. We just said, hey, you know what? Look at that trauma going on down there. Look at that unhealthy scenario. I'm just going to jump in there and take the blunt of it and change it, right?
Right, yeah.
So some people are a little bit more familiar with this concept. When dealing with the absorbed twin and the vanishing twin, I believe there's another way they're trying to achieve this. After doing, I've been doing this for about the past, like I said, 7 years. But with the case study and looking at over 100 different families, it just seemed like there was something possibly going on here. And usually there was some sort of a death in the family where there was a child that was born really, really sick, or maybe died shortly after birth. And, some of this really sad, traumatic stuff that the parents would go through, you know what I mean? And I hope that if anybody listening to this right now has been affected by this, I really want you to hear me out on this one. What if I told you that there might be somebody in your family, or at least your circle of souls, that incarnates into the bodies of your physical lineage? Someone up there that says, you know what? I love them a lot. And I'm going to jump down there and try and take all that imbalance with me to the grave.
Right. So almost like a kind of a martyr spirit in a way. Is it?
Oh, yes. And one that knows exactly where it's going to go after it does that because it did what it did. Not out of because it being able to just do this, but out of love. Because love, once again, is like the reason why this stuff really works. Being compassionate is why this stuff really works. I think what's going on here is there's these souls that are incarnating into these bodies where there's a lot of imbalance. Because I mean, our women have been through so much. You know what I mean? They really have gone through a lot of bad stuff and still here because of it. And so if we're able to do one or two things, either come down, incarnate into a body, and take all the imbalance with them and go to the grave that way, we can wake up also in our physical body now, become conscious of it, and be that conduit that sets balance within our family lineage. This is another way to do it, you know. And this is what really blew my socks off, though, man, was when I saw these souls were coming down. It reminded me of the story we always hear about Jesus, about how it came down from heaven, was a son of God, chose to die for all of man's sins, to ascend back to the Father. That sounds a lot like coming down from God, gathering all the imbalance and dying for our sins to ascend back to the Father. And so to me, it's like some people won't agree with who the messenger is. The only thing I'll ask is, did you get the message? There is something actively going on here that's trying to establish balance. And it's either going to be through souls incarnating and trying to grab illnesses and die super soon and go to the grave. And that's a soul that absolutely loves you and wants to see the best for you. And you'll likely probably see him again. Or we can wake up born into these families of trauma, turn into the empath, turn into the sensitive, and learn how to be that bridge and that conduit between the spiritual and physical worlds, bringing balance to both.
Yeah. Beautiful, beautiful. I like it. So some of so some of the souls, beings, entities, I mean, that are coming down may well be us, or some of them may be the traumas that we carry that we need to release. Is that? Am I following you right there?
So whatever it is something that's already been that's already on the other side, that's already there, loving us, waiting for us. That's coming down to take on the task of dying to bring balance to your family.
Yeah. Okay.
But one of the things I want you to think about too, and here's where I think it gets really important if people decide that these words are speaking to them and that they want to learn how to play their part and do this stuff right. Mm-hmm. We hear about it being the age of Aquarius. Mm-hmm. We hear about the divine feminine rising, right? I think we can really rise that divine feminine by backing it with the divine male. Absolutely. That fire, that action. Because frankly, if we can bring our women back to balance mm-hmm. and just help bring our women back to balance, I think not only will it balance the people, but they will have just their inner ability of being able to lead us back to source in a greater capacity. Because naturally they are more compassionate. Naturally they are more loving and caring. I think guys kind of, guys are guys, and sometimes testosterone does things for guys. But at the end of the day, the women were there to help guide us towards spirit, and the men were there to help protect the women, so that way they could do that.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, I totally agree with you, and I think it's amazing how we've been flooded. I'm sure. I mean, for you as well, over the last, since my lifetime, we've been flooded with this concept of the divine feminine, but there's been this absence of the divine masculine in terms of the zeitgeist. And sometimes when I step back and I look at planet Earth and humanity, it's like I can kind of see almost like a naked man and a naked woman, so to speak, a pure aspects of humanity coming through both sexes, and they have a simple drive to reproduce, to be harmonious, to have generations that follow them, and not to be battered or abused or hurt or traumatized beyond necessary. And I sort of feel like, we've sort of got to a time now in human history where we're sort of becoming aware of how that man and that woman are sort of walking wounded at times. And and there's there's a need to midwife them into harmony, to their souls into harmony. Sorry, I'm totally tripping out there on what you.
No, I'll be honest with you, man. Once I helped that kid in my neighborhood, I haven't really slept in like 2 years, just because I'm always so excited about learning more, and just whatever it is, man, it makes me get up early in the morning and do my thing. So it's whatever it is, it's something that excites me, and it's something that I totally trip out on too, only because I see it's like now staring you right in the face. You know what I mean? And now we can actually do, and I think the fact that we can do something about it is really, really cool. And it just kind of gets the wheels turning as far as like the possibilities of what we can do here, or maybe even why we're here.
Yeah. On a core level, I mean, I'm just sort of thinking like some people would find it very hard to understand how you dangling a pendulum over a picture of a glass of water on their phone could have any influence on the actual water that the photograph is of. Now, I intuitively understand that, but I would imagine that you would have a similar understanding or trust, I guess, coming out of a sense that all things are interconnected. Would that be right?
100%. 100%. When I was presenting this, I had someone, she's also a gifted healer, ask me a question that kind of like fried my noodle too, because I was like, I don't know, I'll have to get back to you on that. And she wanted to know, instead of imprinting a glass of water that you have them drink, why don't you work with the water that's already within their system? And I said, that might be good, and I'll get back to you on that. I said, but to me, them sending that picture of a glass of water means they're open. This is them giving me permission.
I like it. Yeah, because you've got to be open to receive, haven't you?
That's a big part of this.
Yeah. And
I can say,
everything is interconnected, the illusion of separation can have an effect, can't it?
Yeah, I would say the only like variance that I ran into with doing this technique, if someone sends me a picture of a bottle of water, I would say take off the lid, give me an aerial view, like looking down into the water, so I can actually see the water. But usually a glass of water is just fine. And I've even had it for someone that they had really bad arthritis and their body was always achy and stuff. And so I treated them with a glass of water that would help relieve tension and stress. And a lot of it's like emotions too. So learning how to just like resolve emotional energy. And they would take that water and they'd pour it into their 5-gallon jug, and then it would affect the rest of the water the same way. And so they would drink this water for arthritis relief, right? And is it the pseudo effect? Whatever it is something that I think is giving people relief. And we are starting to see these different studies of how people can speak kind words into water. I love you. Thank you. Or I hate you. You're ugly. And then we freeze that water and it creates very different crystals.
Yeah, that was Dr. Emoto from Japan, who I think pioneered.
Correct. So we already see the positive effects of how this works. Now it's just really limited into our understanding and our creativity.
Yeah, it was, it sort of, it occurred to me the other day, I was thinking about the legend of Noah predicting the flood. And in fact, there's been multiple stories of floods through human legend from different cultures. Maybe they were the same flood. And also these individuals who predicted the flood. And it just sort of occurred to me the other day. It's like, well, if we're made up of 90% water, or it's a very high percentage of water that we're made up of, it would sort of, and water has memory, then that resonance we have with whatever water is, we're very close to it, which would explain how individuals at times may well have been able to sense an upcoming flood.
Or being able to stare into a reflective surface of a bowl of water and do a little scrying.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. I mean, how many stories you ever hear of people going to the ocean and then yelling at the ocean and challenging the ocean, and then all of a sudden a big wave comes in,
Yeah.
you know, a little bit bigger than they were before. I think that ocean responds.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. It is. It's like it's almost like the ocean is it's a massive AI system, isn't it? It's a massive information grid, and we're part of it. We're just living in a brief flash of flesh.
Yeah, the ability to be connected and how we're water and it's water, just those two fundamental truths that I held on to is what gave me I guess the confidence to move forward and really believing that, you know, we can positively affect each other even with doing work with water. And so sometimes it's, you know, it's hard for people to conceptualize. And so there's a lot of information that's out there. Raymond Grace was actually the first person who I ever heard talk about this kind of stuff.
Right.
Was doing the water imprinting. And of course, what I do is a little bit different, but essentially it's in the same lines. And the best thing I love about Raymond Grace is when they would ask, hey, can you help me with this or can you help me with that? He would just say, well, I don't know that I can't.
I love it. Yeah, I've watched a few of his videos. He's got a hell of an energy, that guy. I love it. And he's got the bullet pendulum, doesn't he? It's like straight off the ranch. It's just fantastic.
I kind of like how it's got a little talk like this, and he starts talking about using the pendulum, and like, I just really like the way that he just presented stuff. He was super entertaining to listen to.
Yeah, absolutely. Good. All right. Well, where shall we go from here, Nick? Have you still got energy to go, or how are you feeling?
Well, I'm feeling pretty good right now. I mean, we can keep talking. I got nothing else going on. It's a quiet, rainy morning over here in Oregon, so I'm just kind of hanging out, enjoying my coffee, and talking about cool stuff.
Yeah, cool. I would love to touch with you if we've got a little moment on the jinn and
let's go
those darker entities, because in a sense they would be the antithesis almost of, well, I don't know, you have to correct me, the antithesis almost of what you're describing here with the vanishing twin type of martyr entity energy. Would that be right?
So anytime when I refer to like the jinn and stuff, that's just a name, right? It's just a label what we're trying to put on something that basically is a non-human spirit, but it's also not quite an angel either. So an angelic being would be something that's more of an emanation of God, right? So if you're a divine aspect of God, right? If someone said, hey, Frog, you're a good cook, you're really good at working on cars, you're a hell of an artist, you're a great father, you're great with animals, which one of those are you? Well, maybe they're all aspects of you, right, to make who you are. And so these divine angels that represent compassion and mercy and knowledge and wisdom and this and that are emanations of God. They're aspects of God, right? Whereas the jinn, demons, are the spawn of something different. And so for people that are familiar with like the Book of Enoch, they talk a little bit about the giants. And if you guys are into any of the same stuff that I'm into, I'm huge into like these old world like conspiracy theories of like us being another civilization after something that was already here. And so I think one of the greatest illusions, and this is where like I would love to get into probably writing a second book about the jinn, just because now we're going to dive into a little bit more like the historical stuff. And I can talk about this for a really long time. So bear with me here. What we're looking at in the Book of Enoch, they talk about a certain group of watchers, or what they would consider divine heavenly beings like angels, that their whole purpose was to guide humanity. Mm-hmm. Humanity was different than them because they had a physical body and they had a spark of the soul, whereas these were like pure spirit. They didn't really have a physical body. They were sent here to guide us, protect us, but really guide us. And over time, some of them felt the desire of man. They looked upon the women and thought that they were beautiful. And basically, there's a story about a fellow named Enlil, or was someone called Samyaza. And it basically was the one that had the other angels say, we're going to make a pact and we're going to take these human wives, and this is what it's going to be. We're going to abandon our divine state of being to be with these women and stuff. And so they end up giving birth to these kids that were called the Nephilim. And the Nephilim were like giants, right? And so some of them were good, some of them were not so good. And one of the things that Enlil or Samyaza, what sent them down this path initially, and I think it's important to understand this because demons have this characteristic. People would pray to God. He didn't have a problem with that. He was a watcher. He watched over people. He helped people. People would pray to God, and he always just kind of wondered why they did that. He was the first created angel of God, what also be called Lucifer, also known as the morning star. Basically have the knowledge of God, but not the know-how of God. It'd be like having someone give you a plot of land and all the materials and all the machines and everything that you would need to build a nice house right there in front of you, but not know how to construct the house. You have all the materials to make it happen, but not the knowledge of how it all works, right? So it's kind of the same kind of thing. Had divine insight of God's plan, but didn't understand all the mechanisms on how it all works and how it's all selectively intertwined. Anyways, one day, these people wanted to praise Enlil and thank him. And so Enlil asked him to build a fire. And so this fire was what was like a spire. It was pretty big. Well, for what it was, he wanted to feel appreciated. And so he asked him to build a bigger fire, the biggest one that they built in his name or whatever, right? Well, this fire got so big that it ended up falling over. And it landed on some people, and it killed some people, and it hurt some people. And Enlil ran down there to try and help save these people, being an energy being. Yes. He got closer to these people going through trauma, and he absorbed that emotional energy right away, and it gave him a sense of euphoria. That was like, oh, this is what it must feel like to be prayed to. Right. Next thing you know, he got very good at making people have emotional reactions so he can take some of that energy. Then he started teaching some of his other angels about that stuff, like Azazel. Right. And they started all learning how to do this stuff, right? And I'm telling you this because this is what a lot of non-human spirits do, is they know how to trigger our emotional energy so that way they can develop something that is called loosh, or what we would consider emotional energy, right? So the Nephilim, they were really bad, but they also had divine insight. But the things that they would see was their own destruction. They knew that they were damned from the get-go and they weren't supposed to be here. And they caused a lot of problems. They would eat all the animals. They would eat all the vegetation. And they even just started eating people. And some would say that the whole reason why some people are really scared of clowns is because of the Nephilim. If they were eating a body, right? The blood on the nose, the blood around the mouth. It's kind of like a subconscious programming of it, right? Wow. So when the time came for judgment, the book of Enoch talks about the flood. And some of them repented and reached out to God and asked for forgiveness and, all this and that. And the rest of them pretty much was like, F you, F this place. And they wanted to burn it to the ground so no one else can enjoy it. It wasn't very good, right? So this is where it gets kind of interesting. If we go into history, we're always told about the Dark Ages, right? All of a sudden there was a time of like lull and darkness, and then all of a sudden we have people coming out building immaculate things, painting immaculate pictures, and just this and that. I don't know what the history was told in UK, you guys growing up, but over here in America, what we were taught about was that there was these beautiful cities in like London and Paris and Brussels and some of these really, really big, beautiful cities that had huge buildings that were made of marble, that were beautiful, well done, even all these fancy fountains that could shoot water and have irrigation, this and that. But all these buildings never had a toilet. And so people are going to the bathroom in the street. Yes. And we could say, oh, it's because of the booming population, yada, 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 yada. But just, you have a building that can hold between 300 and 500 people in these rooms, and not a single one of them has a bathroom in it. Yeah. This tells me something else is going on here. So whether or not people believe in this part, I'll just put it together. And that is, some of these places, they not only didn't have a plumbing system as far as that goes, but they also used something called radium, which is, we're told, is radioactive and bad. and they would be able to derive an ultraviolet light from radium, not only heat their homes, but let's just say they were able to generate free energy from the atmosphere because of these giant spires that were on these buildings. Between the free energy and the radium in the homes, all of a sudden, these people's bodies didn't really need physical sustenance anymore. Right. They started losing the ability to even have to use the restroom, or maybe they never used the restroom at all. And so these buildings would almost seem as though we didn't build them at all, and that they were inherited by the people that are there now. Yes. And so you look at World War I, you look at World War II. There was a lot of bombing in London. There was a lot of bombing in France, and Germany got the shit bombed out of them too. You know what I mean? What do these three places have in common? There was tons of this architecture. This architecture was not just a city. It was an energy grid, much like a computer. And here's the other part that gets really, really interesting here. These Nephilim, they're pretty interesting beings, but they're not the only ones that are here. Bells, bong, bells would disrupt them and would sometimes repel these things too. And so when this happened, there was something like, 500,000 bells or something that was like confiscated, that they basically melted down and said they needed them for bullets and they needed them for tanks and all this and that or whatever, right? But if we actually look at a war that's removing all the bells from the surface of the planet, I think it's starting to paint a different picture of who this war really was about and what it was about. And so if you look at all these different countries around the world that have all these different civil wars going all the way back to Sumerians, and you hear about the Phoenicians, these people that came from the sea and stuff, it starts pointing to that there might be some more about this world than we know about, or that we're being told about. Yeah. If you ever look at some of these old world fairs, like the Old World Fair in Chicago or in Buenos Aires or in London or France and some of these places, you'll see this old architecture. And the humans were around back then too. And we had our own architecture that I believe was also taught to us by some of these good giants that saw us as, not like pets, but like they were like caretakers of, like they wanted to teach us how to liberate ourselves, and they wanted to teach us how to just be in harmony with the environment and stuff. And so these two groups of giants, they were the first ones to get into conflict with each other. Right. Yeah. The ones that wanted to help humanity versus the ones that wanted to go over humanity. Right. So we're going to get a little weirder with this next part here, but I think it's important because people need to understand this.
Yeah, absolutely. So, just to interject there, often looking for this information, you would find it under Tartaria or a previous Great Reset, wouldn't you?
Yeah, or Mud Flood, Tartaria. Yeah, free energy.
Yeah. And it was interesting. Yeah. One of the things I remember when I was checking out through the Book of Enoch, that I think it sort of mentioned that some of these watchers or the wayward ones began to teach humankind. Well, they taught men how to make weapons. And
like a Zazel? Yeah.
How do we
metallurgy and how to make spears and swords and shields and not only that, they were extremely good at witchcraft.
Yes, right. In fact, the old word pharmakia, which we get our word pharmacy from now, actually, I think it translates to witchcraft or some sort of spell. Yeah. But anyway, so we have got to where we are now, which is we've got the Tartaria, the Mud Flood and all that, and then you've got these warring giants or Nephilim who are offspring of these watchers. Where are we going now? You said things were going to get weirder.
Yep, we're going to get into who the Nephilim came into conflict with over us, and so the Hindu mythology talks a little bit about them. The Nagas. The Nagas being divine serpent beings that are full of knowledge, full of wisdom, and guided humanity. All around the world, we even see, even in like Latin America and some of these other places, we always hear about dragons and this kind of stuff, and people turning into dinosaurs. But really, what this points to this points to what I think a lot of people try and say when things are interdimensional and things that are like even ET or alien, is that when I started doing this work with the jinn, right? And I started piecing together that, oh man, these jinn, these demons are actually like the dead Nephilim, right? And so I wouldn't tell people to sit here and have conversations with them. I don't think that's very smart, especially if you're not really knowledgeable in how to like identify when they're around, especially if they're being deceptive or just some knowledge of knowing how to heal them and clear them. I wouldn't engage in conversation with them. Just keep it about business when you're dealing with it. So for me, I've been doing this for a while. I started asking a few questions. And the only reason why I ask them questions is to make sure that the information that I'm providing is respectful and from what they understand to be true. Okay. So this is like, take it with a grain of salt, but I'm gonna go ahead and jump into it. So doing this work with the jinn, I would ask them, were you once a Nephilim? A lot of them would say yes. Well, once in a while they would say no. And so this, there's a type of jinn that I would call a Quarin. I've seen it talked about in the Quran. And the German word for it would be doppelganger. People over here in America would probably call it a mimic. But when we have these spirits that are in our house,
yes,
that can sound like us or do the things like we do, walk around and make it sound like we're there, or even sometimes we think people are sleepwalking, but a lot of times they end up in our dreams and they end up being someone that we love or someone that we know doing something really bad or out of character, like maybe yelling at you because they're really a nice person, but they're super mean in your dream. Or one of the common ones is like when they portray themselves as like your partner getting cheat and then like cheating on you. Right. This is like a big one. Once again, triggering that emotional energy so they can live off of it. Right. It's like a form of sustenance.
Yep.
So what these are actually something different entirely. And so what I've come to understand was that there is this, you hear people talk about reptilians.
Yes.
And sometimes it's like, oh, okay, this is really getting weird. But what I'm saying is I found a correlation with these demonic spirits and reptilians now too. And that the reptilians and the Nephilim are separate. So the classification of demons actually has two different classifications now based on what I can see. And that these Quarin and also the entities that are known as the Rakshas, these are like temple spirits that you would find in India. These are the two classifications that I found that would actually identify as being reptilian. And so reptilians, there's some divine ones that are out there, but essentially a lot of them just saw humanity as like food. You know what I mean? We were something to eat, and they've been here for a really, really long time.
Yeah.
And so there came a point where these two groups, the Nephilim and the reptilians, worked together. And they worked together because they had a common interest, and that was whatever the heck was with us. When we died, our essence moved on to some sort of a celestial land that they could not access.
Right.
They would try, and they wanted knowledge of this. And so not only did they want to control us, but it was more so for studying because they wanted to understand how we work. So that way they can do what we can do and get to where we're going because they can't. Well, through the many resets that have happened on this planet, there came a time where they went to war with each other. And they warred for about 1,000 years against each other. And this is when the good giants, or what some would call the Anakim, that came from the land of Anak, they basically stepped in and taught us all the good stuff about how to build with frequency, about how to protect ourselves with frequency and vibration, and really just gave a breakdown on this. Well, after 1,000 years of these two races fighting each other, they made a truce and then came back to us to take us over, and we almost annihilated both of them.
Right. Okay. How did we do that? How did we? Yeah. How do we nearly annihilate both of them?
Through basically the creation of bells, the creation of different frequency weapons that made it even impossible for them to even step into the same space as us.
Right.
Which kind of makes you think why we have bells at the front of our door, right?
Yeah.
Maybe because whatever it was, especially with these reptilians, we call them shapeshifters.
Yes.
But it's not that they have the ability to deconstruct their molecules and reconstruct another way. It's not that at all. They just understand how we perceive reality, and they're able to manipulate that with the frequency.
Yeah.
And so when you hit the bell, bong, all of a sudden it takes that ability away, and we get to see who and what they really are.
Yeah. Yeah. And this ties in a lot with the Gnostic concept of archons as well. So the archons, I presume, would fall under that reptilian team reptilian, or the group of entities which are attempting to control humanity. I trust. I presume.
You know, in the books that I've read, I've heard about the archons and like being associated with like the demiurge and this and that.
That's right.
And I always kind of thought that they were the same kind of thing, right? Where they were more like a parasitic or some sort of like a demonic entity. And anything demonic is basically when you participate in things that deteriorate the soul, right? Or it doesn't mean you have to be satanic. It just means that they're participating in things that deteriorate their soul. Now, could these things gain a soul matrix? Maybe. It's kind of hard to say, because I believe that if anything desperately cries out to God and asks to be fulfilled with that light, I think they will take it on in one way or another, right? And so humans, we're a little different because we actually have a piece of the creator within us, and it's encapsulated inside a physical body. Whereas like these beings would be like 2/3 physical, where they're a little bit more spiritual in nature, but that doesn't mean that they have a soul matrix like we do. They're like an emanation of it. So these archons, whatever they are, they're powerful. And there's something that I think a lot of people, like in Gnostic texts, like you speak about, are kind of like held responsible for some of like the destructiveness that's on this planet.
Yeah, yeah. And so say possession with somebody who's possessed by jinn or this kind of energy, would you say that, and now we're getting into really tricky territory here, but
sure, speak freely.
Okay, well, so the ideas like NPC and organic portals, which have been floating around, how do you think there's a connection there?
100%. You know, first of all, why would they possess? I mean, some people would say that, you know, because they want to experience things like sex, and they want to experience like some of this other stuff that they don't get a chance to. Some of that might be true, but they're also basically trying to possess or take over the body because they know that if they can kill the body, they're trying to move on with the essence of it. It's like, right. Some of them are really desperate. You know what I mean? They've been kind of stuck in a space for a really long time, and they're really trying to get out, and they're willing to do anything to get out. And so I think that's another motive on why they would want to try and attach to a body. But the only way that would really happen is if you became within resonance of it, right? Well, whether it be through like a lot of drug use or a lot of trauma or just maybe a little bit of both and a lot of negative thinking. We have to lower our vibration in order for that kind of stuff to really affect us in that way. Even though possession is like pretty rare, attachments are not. And one of the things that I find the jinn and demons and that kind of stuff attached to is what I would say is the subconscious. And so the subconscious is where trauma is held, but this is also the same place where we go to when we dream. It's all interactive in this spot, is within our dream. And so what you'll find, so this is where like once again get into like the medium stuff that I do, is I can sit with a person or I can talk with a person, and if they have one of these attachments they don't know about, I'll get a vision of like a trauma. Maybe they're in their room by themselves, or maybe they're like watching someone almost drown at like a lake or something, right? Like I'll see this vision really quick. And if I can hold that vision, I'll freeze it for a second. And then I kind of look and I see if there is an audience, if there is anybody in the audience that's there. And that's usually where you'll find a non-human spirit. And so from there, I use my connection. When I see them, I take my breath and I'll pull it right to me, and then I could do the clearing on it here in this life. And so the reason why I'm telling you guys this is because I think they have a little bit of a natural upper hand when we dream, just because most of the time we're not aware of, oh, I'm actually asleep and I'm laying in bed and my name is so-and-so. And, you know, like we're just kind of in this tunnel vision, right, when we're dreaming. But when you have like a scary dream, you can wake up from that dream, take a few breaths, close your eyes, get that last image of what you saw of them, and you connect and you say, come here, I can help you. And then you take that breath and you'll pull them right into this reality, right into your room with you. Now you have your physical body to do the clearing on this. And really what this comes down to is if you guys knew how to operate this stuff, you would never, ever be afraid of it, because what you have is more feet and more worlds. And if you know how to use everything that you are, you can really be of service. And if they know that you know how to heal them and you know how to remove them from their situation and get them to move on into the higher realm that they have been trying to access so dearly, no matter how awful they are, they will listen.
Yeah.
And they'll be thankful.
Right.
And so I tell people how to do this, not so that way it's like a domination or like I'm better than you, so I'm going to do this. No, like respect them. Absolutely respect them, but you don't have to fear them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you can learn to recognize their presence and the way it affects your dreams, how many relationships do you think were ended because someone had a dream of their partner cheating on them, right? You know what I mean? And then they just take it as intuition.
Yeah. 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 Absolutely. Absolutely. Stepping back slightly here, I can sort of, I've often felt like there's something encoded into the nature of the reality that we share, which allows for mimicry and disguise and almost like kind of an imposter energy. And maybe it's the fact that light itself is able to reflect, but just like a Venus flytrap or a leopard with its spots, or animals can disguise themselves within the grass. Even some insects manage to avoid predators by looking like something that the predator would find poisonous.
Right, the butterfly with like the crazy face on its back or something, right? Or the moth, or right?
Exactly. So there's a deep wisdom in that. There's a deep wisdom in being able to really work with three-dimensional reality to fool, to bamboozle. And it seems to be part of the game of evolution, really. But when it comes to consciousness, then those rules can still apply, and perhaps more fluidly. Like you say, the entities could creep into our subconscious, or when we're at a weak point, perhaps, and manipulate. But equally, we have the power to understand that.
Yeah. And the manipulation, the biggest part that I think is the hardest part for me is helping people getting over like the fear mechanism of it, right? The fear mechanism of this kind of stuff and why it is the way that it is. And it's really out of survival. These things are stuck and they don't know how to move on. And if they get caught, then they lose that nourishment. But they're definitely just as interested in us as we are in them. But most of the time, they are so used to not being seen that when you say, hey, I know you're there, sometimes you scare them, right? Yes. Because they're so used to not being picked up on. But the one thing that there's two things that they're really scared of. One is that we'll use some sort of witchcraft to like hold dominion over them, which is something which is absolutely true. We can use witchcraft and do things to them that aren't very nice. And I just would really stress them not to do that, because it's not guided out of love. It doesn't serve our best interests. The only other thing that they're more scared of that I've found than that is to be picked up by somebody that can recognize them and then cast them back out to the darkness and do nothing. Right. They are more scared of that than anything else, right? So they will choose to remain hidden, be very elusive, and really just try and be really hard for you to deal with or just acknowledge it's there. But if we change that and we say, hey, you know what? I don't care what you've done. It's okay. I'm here to help you. Even if it's like the end of the day and you're tired, just be like, hey, look, I'm really tired right now. Let me go to bed. Please don't mess with my dreams. Only deal with me and my family. Please be respectful while you're a guest in my house. And when I wake up in the morning, I will gladly help you and assist you. You know what I mean? And if you lay the parameters, you can even say it in your head. They'll hear it. You put those parameters out there, most of them respond. So if them being deceptive and liars is what everyone's always talk about, trickster spirits, right?
Yeah.
Give them what they want and give it to them freely. And just offer it to them out of compassion and watch how their demeanor changes.
Right. Yeah, I like it. I mean, there is something about, if they're a parasitic energy or entity, the last thing it wants to be is have the light shone on it. Because by being identified, it's putting itself in peril to being removed. So I suppose this sending it back to the light, as you say, is a bit like that.
Well, this is going to open up another topic about the light. I wouldn't exactly say that they go to the light from our understanding.
Okay.
Most of the time, people, when they start doing the spiritual work, they want to bring upon some sort of a family guide or a spirit guide to help escort them to the light, something outside of them, right? Mm-hmm. The more I started doing this in the beginning, the more off I felt about it. And something just told me that this wasn't the right way to do this. And so when I started doing clearings on earthbound human spirits, one of the things that I asked after I took away their pain, take away their memories of pain, nourish them, as I would say, hey, do me a favor. Can you look down in the middle of your chest and tell me, do you see a light here? And they would look down and they would see the light. And I would say, look into this light, gaze into this light, and I'll take a deep breath in with me. And I'd say 1, 2, 3. And I clear them on the spot. So that light within is that Christ spark. It's that spark of source that's within, which makes us merge with the creator. This is my opinion. Take it with a grain of salt. The light that's outside of us, that's at the end of the tunnel that we see our family members and all this and that, right? That's the illusion. That's the illusion. And we don't want to follow that. Because when we go to that light, we just get instantly reborn back into a physical body. Yeah. We don't get a chance to actually rest. We just get reborn. And so this is what is also called samsara, or just the inevitable reincarnation. Whereas if we merge with the creator, we can still reincarnate, but it'll be at our choice and when we're ready to. And the whole thing with the absorbed twin coming down and taking the imbalance with them, they come down from source. They're not stuck within the whole cycle of reincarnation. They're the ones that come down from source to try and take everything with them. Right. So the reason why demonic spirits do not go to the light, they weren't the ones that created that trap, but they know all about it. And they will not go to it because they know it's just going to get them stuck again.
Right. Okay.
And so those reptilians, they're the ones that created this whole soul trap matrix thing.
And the David Icke obviously refers to the reptilians as well as shapeshifters. We're talking the same language here, aren't we?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they got a lot of names. They're kind of still shrouded in mystery, and it kind of makes you feel like you're crazy to like talk about it. But whatever they are, they're old, and some books refer to them as the custodians because they've also seeded different lands and all this and that. I mean, there's a lot of story that like goes into these things. But like I said, take what I say with a grain of salt, because what I'm telling you right here is through my own personal questions that I've had with these different kinds of things over the years. And I don't ask a lot of questions, but I'll ask like 2 or 3 before I do the clearing.
Yeah, sure. Just as an aside, I like that you say take it with a grain of salt, because your name is, of course, Salzman, which means salt man.
Isn't that funny? Yeah, no, it's actually kind of funny you said that. I didn't really put 2 and 2 together, but you're absolutely right.
Cool. It's just on that topic. I'm sure it was Stuart Swerdlow I heard saying a long time ago something about the reptilians, that their DNA it has worked a way out of a way of existing and moving through 3-dimensional reality. Say like crocodiles or snakes or whatever, without having to change much, without having to alter itself much. And there's a strength in that. There's an ancient strength in that ability to move through time without having to adapt or change particularly. Whereas the mammalian DNA, it's, we are more adapters. I mean, in the talk that Swerdlow was talking about, I'm sure he was pointing to some idea that they were like literally from some other solar system or planet where and there'd been some sort of galactic war. I mean, it was incredible stuff, but it sort of ties in with the Anunnaki and the Nephilim and all that kind of jazz. But that always stuck with me, that I thought, well, that does ring true. The alligators, crocodiles, snakes, they've been around here for millions of years and they've barely changed. Whereas we mammals, particularly with frontal
changed a lot.
Yeah. So in some ways we are shapeshifters. That's the interesting thing. If you look broadly over time, whereas they're not in that respect. But I digress.
Yeah. And I think there's probably some truth to our genes being somewhat manipulated and stuff. If these things are also in charge of like populating the planet, it's they don't want us to be certain heightened senses maybe dulled down, or just ambitions dulled down, whatever it is. I definitely think that whatever we are is like extremely unique. And when it comes down to it, man, physical reality and us being in the center of it, right? We like to be told that we're little, that we're insignificant, and that we're not the center of the universe. But realistically, we're at like a point in the universe where a lot of different realities intersect with each other, and we are the middle ground between all of that. So whatever we are, you can call yourself center, unique is what I think we are. And something that for whatever reason harbors a soul, and we have access to some really neat creative abilities, but we also have a little bit of that, what people will call reptilian mind, right? So what we also have is like a warrior spirit that's with us too, that makes us not only the ability to interpret God clairvoyantly, be able to access information, remote view, and all this and that, and then on top of it, be warriors that can find stuff and take things out. Like, we're a big time threat, even in our diminished form. And so really what it comes down to, the only thing that really have on us is manipulation. Make us forget, which is what I think a lot of those wars were for, was to dismantle all of these old buildings that would make people ask questions, where some of them were built by giants and some of them were built by people. It's like, cathedrals. Cathedrals, for instance, were never built for prayer. It's like, I've been to the Cologne Cathedral in Germany, and I mean, you look at that thing, it's like over 300 feet tall, right? Everything intricately carved. People spend their entire lives, generation after generation, decorating this building, right? And it's so just complexively just amazing.
Yeah.
But these buildings, if you were to hear about the term of cymatics were like, you put like sand on a plate and you hit that frequency and it like changes and makes a shape, right? Well, if you found the frequency for like, say, optimum cellular regeneration, some sort of a healing frequency, right? And it said, this is the shape of it. You built a building based on that shape, and then you put a giant organ or a bell that could also make the same tone, and then made all of the geometric proportions with the dome resonate this, right? This was a healing chamber. These healing chambers not only healed the people that were inside of it, but it also projected it out to the people around. So we would see these patterns of stained glass windows and cymatics. It's telling you what frequency that building is. And so what would happen is the frequency would raise in these places. You could get healed there, but all of a sudden, advanced angelic beings, that vibration was high enough that they started becoming a little bit more present. And all of a sudden, we could get information from them and guidance from them.
Yep.
And so when people would walk into these places years later, and all of a sudden they would see an angel in one of these buildings, it was really easy for them to say, this is a place of worship. This is where the angels come from. When really it was an advanced form of bringing heaven down to our earth level, which is what we have the capability to do.
Yeah. And it makes you think, we got, especially out of the 70s, we've got all our brutalist architecture. I don't know if you've got the same thing in the States there, these, at these 90-degree angles and just sort of block solid architecture, which is uninspiring and sucks the spirit out of you, And you sort of think, is that part of the agenda to sort of dull our senses, where beauty is no longer a bridge to actually the divine,
Mm-hmm. It's like, when you would see the outside of these buildings having gargoyles, right? And we were always told that these gargoyles were like a good thing, like protection or something, right? But what if the ancients were trying to tell us what these buildings actually did? And if you had these going all around and they're playing bells all the time or playing these organs, things like the reptilians, things like the Nephilim, they couldn't be on the surface with us. It would actually repel them. And so this is where our stronghold was that vibration, which was heightened, which gave us access to spiritual knowledge, which made us more spiritual like people, which is one of the reasons why we almost defeated both of them in the first place.
Yeah, that's a lovely thing to hear. I just hadn't really pieced together that part of the story with the pushback, the resistance, the rebellion, you could say, from humankind against these sort of more darker or manipulative forces. And it also makes me think of that, is it in India, there's that massive temple structure, a Khan Chakra or something it's called, where it's literally carved, it's carved out of one piece of stone.
One piece of stone.
Yeah. It's like it's been 3D printed.
Or you
Absolutely.
get these blocks that weigh like 120 tons.
Yeah.
That this type of granite is only found 500 miles away across these mountains, and it's for some reason it's here. It's just like this stuff is just like it's so mind-boggling, right? Like how could you do that, right? Without just basically there's a piece to the story that they're not telling us.
Yeah, it does, and it does make me think. Like it's the removal of human history, because with our history we have a sense of self, where we've come from, and a direction. If you can, well, it's trauma-based mind control, isn't it? If you can traumatize people enough, they'll go into a state of temporary, or maybe longer than that, collective amnesia. And then that creates a sort of a wall between their ability. As a result of trauma, we try to piece back ourselves, a new sense of self. But because that trauma has occurred, it becomes very difficult for us to penetrate what was behind that trauma, because we have to re-experience that trauma. So on an individual level, you can see that plays out, but also on a collective level as well, which is, I think, why we get these resets. And I would sort of say the watchers, or those energies which are trying to manipulate us, they can see that there are awakenings that are occurring, blossomings within human history, or within the human progression. So they need to create some sort of event which will sort of reset not just technology, but our own senses of selves, to keep us within that samsaric loop, so to speak.
Sure. And the best way to manipulate that too is also to erase their own history of their presence, so that way it can remain hidden. One of the things too that the Nephilim had was like 6 fingers and toes, and a lot of times they had 2 rows of teeth too, so they could eat things a lot faster. And so it kind of puts things into perspective when you start seeing these old marble statues of like what we would consider like Roman gods or like Greek gods, but all of a sudden their arms cut off, or all of a sudden their foot's gone, or all of a sudden the head's gone altogether. Maybe because those statues originally had like 6 fingers and toes, and that the old gods of old were actually these Nephilim, which we were told all died within the floods, which I don't think that's 100% true.
I did hear, some of those giants that were found, the skeletons that have been, scurried away to the Smithsonian
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they had like 6 fingers and 6 toes, didn't they?
Mm-hmm. And they were also redheads too. A lot of these giants, they were pale skin and had reddish hair. A lot of them were that way with the Nephilim, and you would see these old paintings and stuff with these old stuff where this is what these people look like: pale skin with like red hair. I mean, there's even like natives over here that I believe in Nevada, where Lovelock Cave is. They came into conflict with these redheaded giants that would like eat their people, and so they eventually got sick of them doing this, right? And so they chased them into a cave and basically set a giant fire at the entrance and smoked them out and killed them. You know what I mean? And then you hear about the giant of Kandahar, where there was like an American military group that came into contact with a giant over there that killed a bunch of them, and just the whole reconnaissance of that. And then you hear about all the different giants of bones that are found all around the world and stuff. And so basically what it comes down to is if we learn about them, and then we also learn that our history is probably skewed. And once that lid's blown off, which I think is exactly where we're going, hopefully we don't get reset again.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny when you mentioned earlier, I can't remember who it was. Was it Enlil, or who got the humans to build a fire?
Yeah, Enlil or Samyaza.
Yeah, and it was interesting that you sort of that the story went that the humans built a fire, a great big fire, and then the fire collapsed. And I thought that is a perfect parallel with essentially a story of the Tower of Babel as well, where a tower was built almost to reach a kind of divine level, and then the tower collapsed and people were scattered and what have you. But sorry, I just had to reflect on that. But what an amazing time we come to now. So, we had the Library of Alexandria, which was burned down 2,000 plus years ago, whenever it was, which was probably the greatest corpus of knowledge that was collected for the species. And who knows what was behind the burning and the destruction of that library. But here we are now in 2025, not only with a massive corpus of information in terms of the internet, but also large language models, which are training off that, can get very quick output and input, and exchange with information about who we are, where we've come from, and what we're doing. And we're living at the cusp of an incredible time of change and novelty and structural collapse. What an amazing time to be alive and to witness that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Absolutely. What a time to be alive. And I think a lot of us came here for whatever show we're about to be a part of.
Yeah.
And, if, these words we're talking about today, if people are finding resonance with them and kind of like feeling a certain way about it, just remember, there's three things that won't hide forever. One's the sun, one's the moon, and the other one's the truth. And so I think a lot of us here that are born right now have also been in some of these other lifetimes where these collapses have happened or these resets have happened, and we're all here to initiate it again. And I think this time it's going to be different. That's my belief.
Yeah, I've got that feeling as well. I feel like there's a party coming and everybody's invited.
Everybody's invited.
Yeah.
And I think our real power though is going to be not in our ability to get even, but in our ability to forgive.
Yeah. It's coming into balance. It's not about staying in a dualistic battle. It's about transcending that, I think. Nick, thank you so much. This has been great fun. I have no idea how long we've been talking for, but I'm sure it's longer than normal. But for anybody who's still listening and has enjoyed this and who'd like to find out more about Nick's work, Nick, you're not necessarily writing a book on the Phantom Twin at this point.
Not currently, but I'm sure it will be something in the future, especially once I start getting a little bit more information with some of the other diseases and stuff that I also found connected with this. So it's a little bit more of a complete understanding.
Yeah. Okay. But you do have obviously books on Jinn and the Pendulum, the Apometrix.
Yep. Yeah, I got a book on the Jinn. I have a few of them left. I got to order a few more. That's available on my website, pendulumapometrix.com. I can send you that link, no problem. But really, find me on YouTube. You can look up Tattoo Medium. You can look up Nick Salzman, which is my name on the screen. You can type that into. And I have tons of videos on there that teach people how to do all this stuff, all for free. And so, the knowledge is free. Just what's the price of it is just implementing it into what you do. And just understand that I have a lot of unpopular opinions. And here's some of the stuff that I found. And I just want you to remember, don't just take my word for it. Find your truth in it, because that's the most important part here. And we're all a little bit different. You don't have to be like me, because you probably have your own uniqueness that's ready to come to the surface, right? So take what I say, like I said, with a grain of salt, and just realize that this is some of the stuff that I found along the way. And I hope it fuels your discovery individually, so that way you can bring your uniqueness to the world. And that's what this is really about.
I love it, Nick. Thank you so much. It's just been great fun. I
look forward to connecting again.
That will be absolutely great. Maybe we'll have Kelly with us next time, or you'll have Kelly with it, or maybe the three of us will be online at the same time. But it's been, a real roller coaster ride running through all these subjects today. So thank you. And with that, I think we are at the end of the interview. I want to thank everybody who's been watching and having the patience and the time, the inspiration, the understanding. You were obviously meant to hear this story and this chat today, so I hope it's done some good for you. It's certainly done that for me. We ask you, of course, at Divine Alchemy Healing to give us a like, a subscribe, a share. If you enjoy the content, we always appreciate and welcome new members joining Divine Alchemy Healing. And until the next interview, whenever it is, be sure to check out Nick Salzman at least doing his dancing, which is absolutely magnificent. And we will see you all soon. I'm Planet Frog. This is Divine Alchemy Healing. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And thank you for existing. Bye-bye.
Pendulum